3 of us drive for the district. 22 stops on my run, out and back, twice a day. Most mornings nothing happens. You get used to nothing happening. My route sheet is a laminated card clipped to the dash, and it's been the same card since March, coffee ring and all. 22 stops. I could say them in my sleep. So when I pulled over on Ridgeline Road that Tuesday and got the door open, before I was awake enough to know why, I had to look down and count them again. I should explain what the run is because it matters. I take Unit 14 out of the lot at 5:40 in the morning. It's an older bus. Diesel, high step, a heater that only works if you hate your legs. The lot is 4 miles outside town, and the first 11 stops are all in the grid, the streets with sidewalks, where the houses are close enough that kids stand together in little clumps under porch lights. That part of the run takes 40 minutes, and it's easy. Then the road goes out. Ridgeline Road is the long piece. 9 miles, no lights, no center line for most of it. Trees on both sides that lean in enough that in summer it's like driving through a hallway. There are 6 houses out there, and every one of them is a stop. Between stop 9 and stop 10, there's about 2 miles of nothing. No driveways, no mailboxes. A gravel pull-off on the right side where the shoulder widens. The kind of spot the county puts in so a truck can turn around. That's it. That's the whole geography of this. 22 stops, one long, dark stretch, and a pull-off in the middle of it that isn't anything. That Tuesday morning I had 26 kids on board, and the sun wasn't up. I remember the frost was on the inside of the windshield, which happens when the defroster is losing. I remember Dylan Marsh was in seat 3, telling somebody about a video game, loud, the way 9-year-olds do when they've decided the whole bus needs it. Normal morning, boring morning. Boring is the point. And then I was stopped. Not slowing, stopped. Brake set, the door lever pulled back under my hand. The door folded open, cold coming up the stairwell. My headlights pointing at gravel and trees. I don't remember deciding to do it. I don't remember reaching for the lever. My hand was already on it. I sat there with my heart going a little too hard, and I looked out the open door at absolutely nothing. Gravel, weeds, a tree line about 10 feet back. No house, no kid, no porch light. I looked down at the card on the dash, and I counted the stops with my finger like a man who can't read. 22. Number 9 is the Kessler place. Number 10 is the Aylward place. Between them there is nothing, and there has never been anything, and I was parked in it with my door open. I closed the door. I said something out loud like, "Wrong turn," which doesn't even make sense on a road with no turns, and I drove on. Here's the thing I keep going back to. Nobody laughed. 26 kids in a bus that had been full of noise 30 seconds before, and when I looked up in the big mirror to see who was going to give me grief about it, they were all just sitting there, looking at me, waiting for me to go. I told myself I was tired, and I was. I'd been picking up the afternoon activity run for extra hours, and I'd been getting about 5 hours of sleep for 2 weeks. That's the kind of tired where your body starts driving without you. Anybody who's ever done a route knows what I mean. You come to and you're 8 blocks past where you thought you were, and you don't remember any of it. Your hands know the job better than you do. That explanation held up fine. It was reasonable. I said it to myself in the shower that night, and it sounded like a real thing a real person would say. It lasted until Thursday. Thursday I was wide awake. Coffee, cold air through the driver's window, and I was in the middle of telling Emma Kessler to sit all the way down, not halfway down, all the way. I was saying the word down, and my foot came off the gas. I felt it happen. That's what I want you to understand. It wasn't a blackout. I was present for the whole thing. My right foot lifted, moved over, and set itself on the brake, smooth and easy, the way you do it when you've got a bus full of kids and you don't want anybody's backpack in the aisle. The bus rolled into the pull-off, gravel under the tires, and my left hand came off the wheel and pulled the door lever. I watched myself do it, the way you'd watch somebody else. The door folded open. Cold air. Nothing out there. Emma sat all the way down. I said, Sorry, thought I saw a deer." Nobody said anything. I got the door closed and got us moving, and I was shaking a little. Not scared exactly. More like the way your hands get when you almost run a stop sign. I made the rest of the run. I got them to the school on time. I sat in the lot afterward for 11 minutes with the engine off, thinking about it, and I came up with the answer, and the answer was decent. There's a dip in ridgeline right about there. The county patched it a few years back and did a bad job, so there's a low spot where the road settles, and it makes the front end of an old bus float a little. You feel it in your hands. My body probably learned that dip in 3 months of driving it and started treating it like a hazard. Slow down, check, move on. Every driver has spots like that. There's a mailbox on 4th Street that I've never once hit, and I still hold my breath every single time. So it was the dip. Muscle memory. Fine. I believed that for about 4 days. And then, on Monday, I did something stupid. I got out. I stopped there on purpose on Monday afternoon, on the way back to the lot with the bus empty. I wanted to see the dip. I wanted to look at the pavement and go, yeah, there it is, and be done with this. The dip is real. I'm not making that up. You can see the patch, darker asphalt, maybe 40 feet of it, and the shoulder sags on the right side where water sits. But that's not what got me. I was standing there with the engine idling behind me, and I looked at the pull-off, and the pull-off is worn. Not weeds and gravel, packed. There are 2 grooves in it, shallow and wide and smooth, exactly the width of a bus, running from the pavement in and back out again. The gravel between the grooves is loose and full of dandelions. The grooves have nothing growing in them at all. Something has been stopping there. A lot. For a long time. I stood there and did the math, and the math didn't work. I'd been on this route since March. 3 months. A bus stopping 3 months worth of mornings doesn't polish gravel like that. That's years. That's a rut you'd get from 1,000 stops, which actually calmed me down, and I want to be honest about that, because that's the part I'm not proud of. My first thought wasn't fear. My first thought was relief, because it meant there used to be a stop here. That made sense of everything. There was a house out here once, or a trailer, or a family that moved, and the stop was on the route for years and years, and it got pulled when the kids grew up, and the rut stayed, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'd read an old card once during training, and it stuck somewhere in my head. Somebody showed me an old sheet, and my brain filed it, and my hands kept it. It made sense when I said it out loud, so I said it out loud, standing on the gravel, to nobody. I got back on the bus feeling almost cheerful about it. I even had a little plan. I'd ask Ken about it, get the story, laugh at myself, and that would be that. I sat down in the seat and reached up and unclipped the card from the dash to look at it again. And that's when I noticed the thing that didn't fit. The card is district issue, printed, then laminated, then hole punched. Route 9, 22 stops, with the road name, the house number, and the time down to the minute. It's the same card every driver on this run gets. Mine came out of a folder in the office in March, still smelling like the machine. There is no house number out here. There's no address at all. If a stop had ever existed at that pull-off, it would have been listed as something. A name, a number, a mile marker, something you could print. You can't print nothing. So what was the stop called? Ken Tarrant runs transportation for the district out of a portable classroom behind the bus lot. He has been doing it for a long time, and he has a way of listening to you that lets you know he's already decided you're going to be fine. I told him a version of it, not the whole thing. I said I kept catching myself stopping on Ridgeline between 9 and 10, and was there ever a stop out there? And if so, could I get an old card so I could stop feeling like I was losing it? He was doing something on the computer the entire time. Ridgeline's got that dip, he said. Everybody taps the brake there. Coogan used to do it. It's not a stop. I said the pull-off looked worn in. County turns around there, he said. Plows. Everybody turns around there. That was fair. That was actually a good answer, and I hadn't thought of it. I asked him to pull the route anyway. He did, and I stood behind him and looked at the screen with him, and it was 22 stops, Route 9, the same list that was on my card, going back as far as the system went, which he said was 2011 when they changed the software. You sure you're not just tired, he said. You're on the activity run, too. That's a lot of hours. Maybe I was. That's what I told myself walking back across the lot. He said one more thing as I was leaving, which was, let me know if it keeps happening. It kept happening. It happened every single morning that week. It happened when I was rested. It happened when I concentrated on not doing it. When I actually said in my head, out loud in my head, do not stop. Do not stop. Do not stop. Coming up on the patch with both hands locked on the wheel, like a student driver, I stopped anyway. Smooth as anything. Door open, cold air up the stairwell. I stopped fighting it after that. It was easier. 10 seconds, in and out. And no one on the bus ever said a word about it. And I told myself that as long as nobody complained, it wasn't hurting anything. That worked for about a week and a half. Then I found the step. We do a walkthrough at the end of every run. You go back to back, seat by seat, checking for a sleeping kid, a phone, a lunchbox, a kid's inhaler. You do it every time. It takes 90 seconds, and it's the law, and it's also just what you do. That afternoon, I was coming back up the aisle, and I looked down at the stairwell, and the bottom step was dirty. Now, a school bus stairwell is not clean. I want to be clear about that. 26 kids get on and off that thing twice a day, and they bring the whole county in with them. But it was a dry week. It hadn't rained in 11 days, and the bottom step was wet. And in the wet, there was grit, gravel dust, gray and fine, in a smear about the size of the sole of a boot. And the top step was clean, and the aisle was clean. Something had stepped on the bottom step, and nothing else. I mopped it with a rag, and I threw the rag in the barrel, and I drove home, and I had a whole speech worked out by the time I got there. Kids track everything. One of them stepped in a puddle behind the school. The county sprays for weeds. A dog got on at the Aylward place. They've got that big shepherd that follows the kids down to the road. This time it left something behind, and the something had a very ordinary explanation, and I liked the explanation a lot. The next morning I watched the step. I want to describe this properly because it's the first thing that broke me a little. I stopped at the pull-off, same as always. Hand on the lever, door open, and this time I didn't look out the door. I looked down. I put the light on. I looked at that bottom step the entire time the door was open. 10 seconds, maybe 12. Nothing touched it. Nothing came up it. The door folded shut. I drove. I checked it at the school, and it was wet, and there was gravel dust in it, and the smear was the same shape it had been the day before, and it was bigger than any kid on my bus. I took it to Wendell in the shop, because at that point I wanted a mechanical answer more than I have ever wanted anything. Wendell has worked on these buses since before I could drive. I told him the door felt off. That was the framing I picked, not something is getting on my bus, just the door feels off. Does it open on its own? Is there a solenoid? Is there an air leak? He put 14 up and spent the better part of an hour on it. He checked the door cylinder, the lines, the interlock, the switch, and he found one small thing, a fitting that was seeping a little, and he replaced it and wiped his hands and said it was fine now. That'd do it, I said. That'd do something, he said. He checked. He found the one thing, and he explained it away in about 30 seconds. And it was so much easier to believe him than to keep going. 2 days later, the door thumped twice on its own. That's the sound it makes when it folds open. 2 thumps. The first is the panel coming off the seal, and the second is it hitting the stop. Every driver on that lot could pick 14's door out of a lineup blind. It's a specific sound, and I have heard it 10,000 times. I was doing 45 miles an hour on the flat part of Ridgeline, a mile before the patch, both hands on the wheel, and I heard my door open. I looked. It was closed. The light on the panel was green. The lever was under my right knee, forward, where it lives. I heard it again that afternoon. Same place, same 2 thumps. Door closed. The third time, on Friday morning, I heard it, and then I heard the third seat back rattle. That seat has been loose since I got the bus. It rattles when a kid sits in it and hits gravel. There were no kids on board. I was running the bus back to the lot, empty. I heard my door open, and I heard somebody sit down in the third seat back. I did not turn around. I want to be honest about that too. I had 900 feet to the patch, and I drove them looking straight ahead like a man with his eyes taped open, and I came off the gas, and my foot went to the brake, and the bus rolled into the pull-off, and my hand pulled the lever. The door thumped twice, out loud, in the real world. I sat there with the cold coming up the stairwell, and I looked at the gravel, and I said, out loud, okay. I don't know who I was talking to. That's the part that bothers my wife. The smell started the next week. It wasn't rot. I want to say that up front because I know what everybody expects. It wasn't a dead animal, and I'd know. I've had a raccoon under the floor pan before, and that's a smell you don't confuse with anything. This was cold dirt and wet wool, like a coat that got soaked and then dried in a cellar, like the crawl space under my grandmother's house. It was in the second seat back on the driver's side, and it was there in the afternoons and gone by morning. And if you stood in the aisle, you could find the exact spot where it started and the exact spot where it stopped, about the width of a person. Emma Kessler moved. She'd sat in that seat every day since kindergarten, and she just quietly started sitting across the aisle. And when I asked her about it, she shrugged and said the seat was cold. I put my hand on it. It was cold. The heater on that side is a joke, so fine, reasonable. The seat by the wheel well is always the cold one. Everybody knows that. It was 50 degrees warmer than the seat next to it should have been in June. That's when I asked Dylan Marsh, 9 years old, seat 3, the loudest human being in the county. I asked him easy, like it was a joke, while they were filing off at the school. I said, hey, how come nobody ever asks me why I stop out on Ridgeline? He looked at me like I'd asked him why we stop at stop signs. He said, because you have to. I said, how come? And he did that thing kids do where they get bored of you. He was already looking at the door. He said, or he has to walk. Then he got off the bus and ran across the lot to his friends. And that was it. That was the whole conversation. 9 seconds. It seemed unimportant at the time. It wasn't. I sat in that bus for a while, with the door open, and the lot filling up with the noise of 600 kids. And I ran through everybody who could have told him a story like that. An older sibling, a parent. The Ridgeline kids all ride together, and they all know each other, and kids make up stories about dark roads. That's what kids do. That's the most normal thing in the entire world. Except that the story was true, because I did stop every single day, whether I wanted to or not, which left the one thing I couldn't answer. If it was a story the kids made up about the driver stopping, fine, but somebody had to stop first, before the story, or there'd be no story to tell. Who was the first driver to stop out there, and why? The buses have cameras now, 2 of them, one over the stairwell, one at the back looking forward, and they record sound. It's an insurance thing. Nobody watches the footage unless there's a complaint. I told Ken a kid had thrown something at another kid, and I wanted to check it before I made it a whole thing with the parents. He gave me the login. He barely looked up. I sat in the portable after my afternoon run, and I pulled up that morning's file, and I scrubbed back to Ridgeline, and I want to tell you exactly what I found, because it's the reason I'm telling any of this. The bus is loud. 26 kids. No lights outside. Everybody yelling. It's a wall of noise for the whole 9 miles. 10 seconds before the patch, they stop. All of them. At once. Not fading out. Not somebody shushing somebody. It's like a switch. 1 second it's a full bus, and the next second you can hear the blower motor and the tires. And then, 3 seconds into that silence, you can hear my foot come off the gas. I watched it 4 times. Then I pulled up Monday. Same. Wednesday. Same. Every single file. 10 seconds of dead silence. Then my foot. Then the brake. Then the door. I had it backwards the whole time. I wasn't stopping, and the kids were going quiet because I stopped. The kids went quiet, and then I stopped. I wasn't remembering a stop. I was answering one. I sat back in that chair in a hot little portable classroom in June, and everything from the first morning rearranged itself. That Tuesday, the one I started with, the one where I couldn't remember reaching for the lever. Dylan had been yelling about a video game, and then he wasn't, and then my hand was on the door. They knew before I did. Every one of them. They'd been riding that road their whole lives, and they knew the exact spot. And they went quiet the way you go quiet in a church. And not one of those kids ever once said a word about it to me, because to them there was nothing to say. That's just the bus. That's just what the bus does. And I made myself find the mundane version, because that's what I do. And I actually found one. Kids are scared of that stretch. The dark, the trees, an older kid's story. They go quiet at the dip because they're spooked. And I've been driving with them for 3 months, and I picked it up off them the way you pick up a yawn. Their silence is the cue. My foot answers it. It's not mysterious, it's contagious. Buses are like that. That held for about 90 seconds. Then I remembered the empty runs. There are no kids on the deadhead back to the lot. There's nobody to go quiet. I pulled the file for that Friday, the one where I heard the door and the seat. And there's no silence on that file to notice, because I was alone, and the bus was already quiet, and I sat there in that chair with the volume all the way up, listening to 9 miles of nothing. Under the blower motor, under the tires, there's breathing. It isn't mine. Mine's there too. You can hear both. It starts about a mile before the patch. It stops after the door closes. Ray Hollis drove Route 9 for 19 years before he retired. He lives in a little tan house off the highway, with a ramp built onto the front steps. I didn't call ahead, I just went. He knew who I was before I said anything, which I've thought about a lot since. I asked him about the stop. He didn't ask which stop. He didn't say what stop. He didn't do any of the things a man does when a stranger comes to his house and asks him a crazy question. He looked at me for a second, and then he looked past me at my truck in his driveway, and he said, "You still stoppin'?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Good." I asked him what it was. I asked him straight out. I said, "What is it, Ray? Who is it? What am I stopping for?" And he did the same thing Dylan did. He got bored of me, or that's what it looked like. Now I think it was something else. He said, "You'd rather it walked?" That's it. That's what I got. I stood on his porch for another 5 minutes, and he talked about his knee and the school board and the price of a transmission, and he would not go back to it, not 1 inch. And when I tried, he just talked over me until I gave up. At the door, he told me one useful thing. He said his old card was in the shop, in the drawer under the parts counter, if Wendell hadn't thrown it out. It was still there, laminated, hole-punched, curled up at one corner. The same district card I have on my dash. Route 9, 22 stops printed on it, and a 23rd line, written under the last one in blue pen, in old man handwriting, pressed hard enough to dent the card under the plastic. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a house number, because there isn't one. It just has a time, 6:14 in the morning. Somebody laminated that card after he wrote on it. That's what I keep coming back to. He wrote it in, and then somebody at the district ran it through the machine and sealed it in and handed it back to him, and nobody ever asked him about it for 19 years. The card I have on my dash was printed in March, and my run hits that patch at 6:14 in the morning. I went to Ken with the card. I put it on his desk and I told him everything. All of it. The silence on the files, the breathing, the step, the seat. He listened to the whole thing without saying I was tired, which scared me more than anything he could have said. Then he asked me to play him the file. I played him the file. He listened to 9 miles of an empty bus with his hands folded in front of his mouth. When it finished, he said, "That's the blower." I said, "Ken." He said, "That's the blower motor. Those mics pick up everything." He didn't look at me when he said it. He looked at Ray's card on his desk, and he put his hand flat on it and slid it into his drawer. And he did not give it back to me, and he said he'd take care of it. 2 weeks later, they rerouted Ridgeline. That's what taking care of it meant. They ran Route 9 backwards, 10 through 15 first, then out the far end and back in on the county road. So the bus comes at the patch from the other direction and doesn't get there until 6:50 in the morning, in the light, with the sun up. It didn't matter. I want you to understand that it did not matter at all. The kids went quiet anyway. Different clock, different direction, and at 6:50 in the morning, on the wrong side of the road, 26 kids stopped talking at once, and my foot came off the gas, and the bus took a step down. I don't know how else to say it. When a person gets on a bus, the suspension moves. You don't notice it because you've felt it a million times. It's just part of the noise of the job. It's a little settle on the right front. You feel it in the seat. I felt it in the seat. Nobody was on the steps. The door was open, and the light was on, and the step was empty, and the bus knelt down under somebody's weight, and then leveled back out. The last piece was a night run in October. Away game. We didn't get back to the county until almost 11, and the last of them got off at the Aylward place, and I had 9 miles of empty road and 1 stop I was going to make. I made it. I don't fight it anymore. Headlights on gravel, door open, cold coming up the stairwell, and I looked up at that big convex mirror over the windshield, the one that shows you the whole aisle at once, because I had decided that this time I was going to look. The aisle was empty, then it wasn't. I'm not going to describe it, because I can't. It was half a second, and it was at the top of the steps, and my brain didn't get a picture. It got a shape, and a wrongness, and the specific certain knowledge that it was not going to sit down. I closed the door, and I drove, and I did not look in that mirror again for 9 miles. Here's how it ends, which is the part nobody believes. They put the stop back, not officially. Nobody wrote a memo. But in August, the new cards came out of the office for the fall, and mine has 23 stops on it. Number 23, Ridgeline Road. No house number. 6:14 in the morning. Printed. Not written in. Printed. And then laminated. By somebody in that office who typed it into a system that said 22 for 11 years. I asked everybody. Ken says it must have been in the system all along. The lady who prints them says she just prints what the system gives her. Nobody added it. It's simply there, in the machine, the way it's simply there, in the road. And everything is fine now. That's the truth. I'm not being dramatic with you. I've been on that route for 3 years since, and there has not been one single bad thing. I come out of the lot at 5:40 in the morning. I do the grid. I go out Ridgeline. I stop at 6:14. I open the door for 10 seconds. I close it. I go. The kids go quiet, and then they start up again. Emma sits across the aisle. The step is wet when I get to school, and I wipe it with the rag, and I put the rag in the barrel. That's it. That's my job. The stop was never the problem. Ray knew that. That's what he was trying to tell me on his porch, and I was too busy being smart to hear it. The stop is the arrangement. You stop, and it gets on, and nothing happens. You'd rather it walked? So it's fine. It's handled. I sleep okay. The thing they never explained, the thing I didn't think of for 2 whole years, is this. I pick it up at 6:14 in the morning. Ray picked it up at 6:14 in the morning for 19 years before me. And whoever had the route before Ray probably did too. And every one of us drove those 9 miles into town and pulled into the lot behind the school with 600 kids in it and opened that door. I have watched that door open every morning of my life. I have never once watched it get off.